Most people don't realize when it happens. There's no warning, no announcement, no dramatic moment. One day, you wake up, and your reactions are no longer your own. Someone's tone controls your mood. Someone's opinion shifts your confidence. Someone else's behavior decides how you feel about yourself. And slowly, quietly, you become weaker. Not physically, not financially, but internally. The Stoics warned about this centuries ago, not because they feared hardship, but because they understood something most people still don't. The greatest danger in life is not pain, loss, or failure. It's unconscious dependence. Before we go further, let me say this clearly. If you've ever felt overwhelmed by people, if you've ever felt drained by expectations, if you've ever wondered why calm seems so rare these days, you're not broken, you're not weak, you're just living in a system that trains people to give their power away. And this channel exists to help you take it back. If this kind of clarity matters to you, subscribe, not for motivation, but for steadiness, because calm is a skill, and strength is trained. Now let's begin. Marcus Aurelius once wrote something that sounds simple but carries enormous weight. He said, in essence, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. That single idea is the dividing line between weak lives and strong ones. Most people never cross it. Why? Because modern life constantly teaches the opposite. It teaches you that your peace depends on how others treat you, how fast you succeed, how much approval you receive, how fair life feels. Stoicism says none of that is true, and that's uncomfortable, because if your suffering isn't caused by others, then responsibility returns to you. This is where most people turn away, but those who stay change permanently. Let's talk about why most people remain weak without realizing it. Weakness, in the Stoic sense, has nothing to do with muscles or money. A person is weak when their emotions lead them, their reactions control them, their sense of self depends on the outside world. A weak person is always responding, never choosing. They react to insults, they react to praise, they react to chaos, and the world never stops testing them. The Stoics observed something brutal but true. If you don't govern your inner world, someone else will. Today, it might be social media. Tomorrow, it's a relationship. Next year, it's fear of failure. The master changes, but the chains stay. This is why so many people feel exhausted without doing much. They're constantly managing impressions, expectations, comparisons, emotions that aren't even theirs. Epictetus, who was once a slave, understood this better than anyone. He said, "No man is free who is not master of himself."
Think about that. A slave telling free citizens that they don't understand freedom. Because freedom, to a Stoic, is not about control over the world. It's about non-dependence on it. And here's the truth most channels won't tell you. You don't become strong by adding more. You become strong by needing less. Less approval, less reassurance, less validation, less explanation. Strength begins when your emotional state stops being negotiable. But this doesn't happen overnight, and it doesn't happen accidentally. There's a moment, quiet but decisive, when a person realizes, I am tired of being moved by everything. That moment is where Stoic strength begins. Not anger, not dominance, not indifference, but discipline of attention. Marcus Aurelius trained himself to ask one question constantly. Is this within my control? If not, release it. If yes, act calmly. Most people never ask this question. They argue with reality instead. They fight traffic, they fight opinions, they fight timing, they fight people, and they lose energy every time. Stoics don't fight the uncontrollable. They conserve force. That's why they appear calm when others panic. That's why they endure when others collapse. That's why they're respected without demanding respect. Because calm is intimidating in a chaotic world. Now here's the pivot, and this is important for you. Stoicism is not emotional suppression. It's emotional mastery. You're allowed to feel anger. You're allowed to feel disappointment. You're allowed to feel fear. But you are not allowed, under Stoic discipline, to surrender authority to them. A feeling is information, not instruction. Most people confuse the two. They feel angry, so they act. They feel insecure, so they explain. They feel afraid, so they retreat. Stoics pause. They observe the feeling without obeying it. That pause, that tiny space, is where strength lives. And here's something rarely said clearly. People respect those who are not easily moved, not because they're cold, but because they're grounded. When you stop reacting immediately, people adjust. When you stop explaining yourself, people listen. When you stop chasing validation, people sense authority. This is not manipulation, it's alignment. But it requires something uncomfortable, letting go of the need to be understood. Stoics accepted a hard truth early. You can live trying to be liked, or you can live trying to be whole. You cannot do both. We make a pause here, because before we talk about how Stoics break free, you need to recognize the invisible habits that keep people weak. In the next part, we'll expose the daily behaviors that silently drain your authority, and how Stoics train themselves to stop leaking power without confrontation, without speeches, without force. If this perspective already feels different, if it feels quieter, heavier, more real, stay with me. And if you want to reflect with others walking this path, leave a comment. Inner strength over outer noise.
At some point in life, something uncomfortable happens. You realize that no matter how kind you are, no matter how careful, no matter how much effort you put into being liked, someone will still misunderstand you. Someone will still judge you. Someone will still talk about you, unfairly, casually, carelessly. And this is usually where people break. They either become angry, or defensive, or exhausted from trying to explain themselves to the world. But the Stoics noticed something important here. They saw that most emotional suffering doesn't come from events themselves. It comes from our need to control how others see us. Marcus Aurelius once reflected that we spend too much time worrying about the opinions of people who don't even govern their own lives. Think about that. We allow the thoughts of people who are confused, reactive, or insecure to shape our mood, our confidence, even our identity, and we rarely question it. Let's bring this into modern life. You post something meaningful online, someone mocks it. You set a boundary, someone calls you cold. You choose discipline, someone says you've changed. What hurts isn't the comment, it's the meaning we attach to it. We tell ourselves, maybe they're right, maybe I'm doing something wrong, maybe I need to explain myself. This is the trap. Stoicism teaches a simple but uncomfortable truth. You are not responsible for the story people tell about you. You are only responsible for your character. And once this sinks in, something powerful happens. You stop living in reaction mode. You stop adjusting yourself to fit every room. You stop negotiating your peace. This doesn't mean you become careless or arrogant. It means you become anchored. Here's the key Stoic distinction most people miss. There is a difference between being aware of feedback and being controlled by opinion. The Stoic listens but does not obey blindly. He observes but does not absorb. Most people absorb everything. They absorb criticism they don't deserve. They absorb expectations they never agreed to. They absorb pressure from people who wouldn't survive a day in their shoes. And over time, this absorption becomes identity confusion. You forget who you were before the noise. This is why Epictetus warned that if you want to improve, you must accept being misunderstood. Not because misunderstanding is good, but because growth always looks strange from the outside. When you stop chasing validation, something strange happens. Your actions slow down. Your words become fewer, but heavier. You no longer need to convince people because you are convinced. And this is where real respect quietly forms. Not the loud kind, not the begging for approval kind, the kind that comes from inner alignment. Let's pause here for a moment. If this part of the message resonates with you, if you've ever felt drained trying to explain yourself to everyone, take a second to like this video. It helps this message reach someone who may be silently struggling with the same thing. Now let's go deeper. One of the most damaging habits we develop is imaginary audiences. We replay conversations in our head. We imagine what people might think. We rehearse defenses that are never needed. The Stoics would call this unnecessary suffering, because in reality, most people are not thinking about you at all. They are thinking about themselves, their problems, their fears, their insecurities. And the few who do judge you, they are often projecting their own discomfort onto your discipline. Your calm threatens chaos. Your boundaries threaten access. Your growth threatens stagnation. So instead of asking, "Why don't they understand me?" ask something more grounding. Am I living according to my values? That question changes everything. When your actions are aligned with your principles, external opinion loses its grip. Not instantly, not perfectly, but steadily. Stoicism is not about emotional numbness. It's about emotional sovereignty. You feel, but you don't drown. You hear, but you don't bend. You adapt, but you don't betray yourself. And here's a hard truth most people avoid. If you live for approval, you will never be free. If you live with integrity, freedom follows naturally. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the best revenge is not to be like the one who wronged you. In modern terms, the best response to judgment is not reaction, but refinement. You don't argue, you improve. You don't perform, you progress. And slowly, the noise fades. Not because people stop talking, but because you stop listening to what doesn't matter. In the next part, we're going to talk about practical mental shifts you can apply daily. How to detach without becoming cold, how to build confidence without arrogance, and how to move through the world with quiet authority. Stay with me, because this is where everything starts to change. And if you haven't subscribed yet, consider doing so now. This channel is for people who are done living in reaction and ready to live with clarity, calm, and self-mastery.
There comes a quiet moment in every person's life. It doesn't arrive with noise. It doesn't announce itself. It happens when you finally realize something uncomfortable. Most of the pressure you feel was never coming from the outside. It was coming from inside you, from the endless need to be understood, from the fear of being misjudged, from the habit of measuring your worth through other people's reactions. The Stoics saw this clearly. They understood that the world doesn't control us. Our interpretation of it does. Marcus Aurelius wrote something close to this. If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your judgment about it. Think about that. Not the comment, not the silence, not the rejection, your judgment. And once you see that clearly, everything begins to shift. Not dramatically, not overnight, but deeply. You stop trying to win every room. You stop rehearsing conversations that already happened. You stop carrying the invisible weight of other people's expectations. This is where real freedom begins. Most people never reach this stage because it requires honesty.
It requires admitting that you've been giving away your peace willingly. You gave it to opinions, to approval, to imagined criticism. And the Stoic response isn't anger, it isn't rebellion, it's clarity. The clarity that says, I am responsible for my mind, nothing else. When you accept this, something strange happens. You don't become cold, you don't become detached from life, you become steady. And steadiness is rare. Most people live like emotional weather vanes, turning with every opinion, reacting to every signal. The Stoic stands still, not because they don't feel, but because they understand what deserves their energy. This is why Stoicism isn't about not caring, it's about caring correctly, about choosing values over validation, principles over popularity, calm over chaos. And this is the moment where your life begins to feel lighter, not easier, but clearer. You realize you don't need to announce your growth. You don't need to prove your strength. You don't need to defend your path. Silence becomes enough. And that silence changes how people treat you. When you stop chasing respect, you start commanding it. When you stop explaining yourself, your presence speaks. This is not arrogance, it's alignment. People sense when someone is no longer seeking approval. It makes them uncomfortable at first, then curious, then respectful. Because confidence rooted in calm is impossible to fake. And here's the part most people don't expect. When you stop caring what others think, you actually become more compassionate. You stop reacting defensively. You stop taking things personally. You stop needing to win every interaction. You listen more. You observe more. You respond instead of react. This is Stoic strength. Not loud, not aggressive, not fragile. Unshakable. And if this part of the video is resonating with you, if something here feels uncomfortably true, take a moment. Breathe. And if you haven't already, like this video, not for the algorithm, but so this message reaches someone else who is silently struggling. Because most people don't need motivation, they need permission. Permission to stop performing, permission to stop pleasing, permission to live honestly. And in the final part of this video, we're going to talk about how to live this mindset daily, not as an idea, not as philosophy, but as a habit, a way of moving through the world with less fear and more control. Stay with me. You're closer than you think.
There's a quiet moment that changes everything. It doesn't happen when you win. It doesn't happen when people finally praise you. It doesn't even happen when life gets easy. It happens when you realize you no longer need permission to be at peace. Most people never reach this point, not because they can't, but because they never slow down enough to notice it. They spend their lives reacting, explaining, defending, adjusting themselves to fit rooms that were never meant for them. Stoicism offers a different ending, not loud, not dramatic, but unshakably calm. Marcus Aurelius once reminded himself that the opinion of others is nothing more than air passing through a mouth. And yet, how many lives are ruled by that air? The final Stoic truth is this: you don't become free by controlling the world. You become free by no longer needing it to approve of you. When this sinks in, something powerful happens. You stop chasing reactions. You stop rehearsing arguments. You stop living in anticipation of judgment. And suddenly, you have energy again. Energy that was once wasted on worry. Energy once lost to comparison. Energy once stolen by imagined criticism. You get it back, and you finally get to choose what to do with it. This is where Stoic strength becomes visible, not in words, but in presence. You begin to move differently. You speak when it matters. You stay silent when it doesn't.
You don't rush to explain yourself, because someone who knows their own worth doesn't need to announce it. This is what Epictetus meant when he said that freedom is not gained by satisfying desire, but by removing it. The desire to be liked, the desire to be validated, the desire to be seen as enough. Once those desires loosen their grip, you don't become cold, you become clear. You still care, but you care intentionally. You choose what deserves your attention, and most things simply don't. At this stage, people around you may notice a change. Some will respect you more. Some will feel uncomfortable. Some may even pull away. That's normal. When you stop feeding the need for approval, those who benefited from it will feel the absence. But Stoicism teaches this gently. You are not responsible for how others feel about your growth. You are only responsible for how you live with integrity. And here's the paradox most people never understand. The moment you stop caring what others think, you often become someone others admire. Not because you try, but because calm is magnetic. Self-trust is rare. Emotional control is powerful. Silence, when chosen, carries weight. You begin to listen more, react less, observe instead of judge. And in doing so, you gain something priceless: perspective. You stop taking things personally. You stop assuming every look is a judgment. You stop reading meaning into silence. Because Stoicism reminds us, most people are too busy managing their own fears to manage yours. They are thinking about themselves, their struggles, their insecurities, their survival, just like you once were. And realizing this doesn't make you bitter. It makes you compassionate. You see others not as judges, but as fellow humans trying to make sense of life. This is where peace deepens, not the fragile peace that depends on conditions, but the solid peace that remains even when misunderstood, even when ignored, even when criticized. Because your sense of self no longer lives outside of you. It lives here, within your values, your actions, your discipline. And when life tests you, as it always will, you return to what you can control: your response, your effort, your character. That's it. Nothing more, nothing less. This is the Stoic finish line. Not domination, not indifference, but quiet strength. A mind that cannot be shaken by opinion. A heart that doesn't beg for approval. A life guided by principle, not applause. If this message reached you, it's not by accident. It means you're ready to stop outsourcing your worth, ready to stop living in reaction mode, ready to build a calm that no one can take from you. If this video helped you see something more clearly, let me know in the comments. What's one opinion you're ready to let go of? And if you want more calm wisdom like this, grounded, timeless, and practical, subscribe to Real Stoic Word. This is a place for those who choose inner strength over noise. Thank you for staying until the end. Thank you for choosing clarity over chaos. And remember, stay grounded, stay unshaken, stay stoic.